Welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today we're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
So, a little bit of a thank you guys before we get into this is that we want to thank you so much for sticking with us after the short break there. Last week, as you know, was Mother's Day, and we are both busy parents, and we really only see each other one day a week. And Mother's Day is also kind of a rough day for the both of us. If you listen to our episode on the pilot episode for This Is Us, you kind of know a little bit of our story and our background with that. And so, you know, we just needed a day.
Yeah, we just needed a day off. So thank you so much for coming back and listening to us this week.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, of course, if you have not gone and see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, you should. As I will say here in our next point here is that it's almost as good as the first one, but
yeah, the humor is definitely different. Like in the last one, I feel like the whole attitude of the movie was like, well, this is completely different. I mean, Marvel's already making a ton of money. Let's just see what happens. And then they realized, oh wait, a good superhero movie can be funny. So I guess we'll just make this all like a big old comedy. So, I mean, it's not, the humor, I feel like, was dumbed down a little bit to appeal to a wider audience, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like, you know, Transformers.
Yeah, it was
bad.
It was kind of putting a little bit of a leash on Chris Pratt, I think, was that wasn't letting him be like fully his goofy self, but he kind of yeah, well, we already gave the spoiler alert, so Star-Lord did deal with some very emotional issues in
this was definitely heavier.
One, so it was heavier for him. And so that's why I guess there you know, it's kind of hard for him to be goofy and fun like he was in
I feel like it was, I would have to say it was heavy for all of them, because all of them in a way dealt with the theme that we're talking about today.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, in their own ways. And so, well, this is my summary, my quick summary of the movie.
I did not prepare, so I'm going to fail. Go ahead.
My quick summary of the movie is the Guardians of the Galaxy start off back in form, doing their Guardians of the Galaxy thing for hire, and they run into Ego, the living planet, which turns out to be Peter Quill's father. He ends up being a villain, and that's my quick summary.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was under 30 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. I'm so nervous. I hate these so much because I want to talk about everything. Okay.
I know.
Okay. So, ready?
Yeah.
I'm trying to stall. Give me some more time. Okay. So you meet the Guardians. They're back on a mission. They're trying to help the Sovereign protect their batteries, and you see Groot. He's all cute and he's a little baby and everybody adores him. He's like the baby of the group now. And then they end up, well, not they, one person ends up stealing batteries, and then the Sovereign goes after them. So then they're running away from the Sovereign, and then they, in the course of running away from the Sovereign, they meet Ego, and then Ego takes him to his planet, and then they're like, oh my gosh, Ego is so nice, he's so great, look at all these things. And then they discover something, and they're like, oh wait, never mind, he is an asshole. So then they try to destroy him because he was trying to kill Peter, and they do, and people cry at the end because people die.
Yeah. Well,
I did pretty good. That was a pretty good summary, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did find out that he was a jackass at the end of the first movie. So
no, a brief mention that he was a jackass.
Yeah. So I do want to briefly kind of go over the phrase "blood is thicker than water," only because there's a controversy around it. Is that it's kind of commonly known to show, or commonly believed to show that friendship relationships or your family relationships are more important than your friend relationships,
and they should always be put first.
Whereas it's also, people believe it to go along with the fact that bonds forged by blood are thicker than the water of the womb.
Yeah, that's the other interpretation. Some people think that blood is thicker than water actually comes from that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And so we have instance of this also within religious texts. You have Jesus that's asked at one point in time in Matthew 12 is he's being summoned outside to say hey, come, and your family's here. They want to come talk to you. And Jesus turns to whoever it was and says, who is my family? These are my family. These people who are sitting here with me are my family. And kind of showing that those who are with me, those who are around me are family. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the point that's trying to be made in Matthew there. And so it really begs this question of what is family?
Yeah.
What do we define as family? And it's especially a difficult question for millennials. Is because we've grown up in this digital age. We've grown up, kind of forming new relationships with people through the internet and through...
Yeah, which is so different than before. I mean, it used to be that you lived in the same town. Everybody grew up, went to the same elementary school. The new kids in town were very rare at most, Even when we were kids, like that was still kind of the case for the most part. But nowadays, people move all the time. People are constantly moving. It's so much easier to move. I know most of the people that I went to college with aren't living in the same hometowns as they grew up in. They're all over the place. They're all over the world, in fact. But the internet itself has made it easier for people to still be connected with their family. But has also made it easier for them to kind of gear away towards their family if they are like stuck in their hometown. Yeah,
to really find new communities.
Yeah.
And I just heard a very interesting podcast recently on this very topic of the internet forming new communities. Was with Bart Campolo's podcast called Humanize Me. It's available on CastBox or on iTunes, so plug for him. So, hey, there you go. His last episode was with Hank Green, and if you're on the internet at all, you know who Hank Green is,
or you should.
The Vlogbrothers. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about internet communities, and that they're talking about all of that, and Bart kind of brings up several times his relationship with his own father, with the fact that it's very strained. And if you're unaware, Bart's father is Tony Campolo. And for those of you that don't know, Tony Campolo is kind of huge in the evangelical movement. He has written very many books. He's actually he's got some great thoughts on a lot of things. And he is a very, kind of high echelon Christian thinker. Mm-hmm. And Bart, his son, is a humanist chaplain for, I think it's one of the California universities. I can't remember which one.
Berkeley.
Maybe? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I just named one that I knew. And I have to say, I have noticed that there has been a growing trend of university chaplains now being either humanist or agnostic. Mm-hmm. They'll still go to some seminary, or they'll still go to school to study religion. However, they themselves aren't necessarily associated with Christianity or Judaism or anything like that. So I think that's kind of an interesting turn. But we can talk about that in another podcast. Sorry.
Well, no, this is kind of, where I wanted to go with this was that it has a lot to do with familial relationships, with the way that we interacted with our parents. Is that a lot of these things, and especially it's evident in Bart and Tony's relationship there with it being strained, and that they were working on getting it back together. Apparently, there's going to be a movie out about it. He talks about that in his most recent podcast, so go check that out. It's actually a great conversation. So let him know that we sent you over there.
Hint, hint.
Yeah, let him know that he should listen to our podcast too. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. But I actually did hear him speak once, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, well, and you see that like the father-son relationship strain too in Guardians with Peter and with Yondu, even though he was like a surrogate father. Even though Peter wouldn't have thought of him as a father until the very end, like he realized, oh wait, you were my father, like you made me who I am today.
And he had a magic arrow and not a magic talking car.
That's okay. But it does show that that happens sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people can go through life like thinking that they don't have like a parental figure, but then all of a sudden like reality hits them and they're like, oh wait, no, it was this person is actually the person I should give the credit to, because they are the ones that actually raised me.
Yeah, there's especially with Gen X and with boomers, some of us millennials have all come from, the statistics on it are huge. Like so many of us have come from broken homes. Mm-hmm. We're all too familiar with that. And one of the things is that we do have strained relationships with some of those other parents. Even if you don't come from a broken home, you have a strained relationship with a parent. And even with my own father, that's still somewhat strained in a lot of senses. Is that I love my father and I love him deeply, and there's still some things that he and I don't see eye to eye on, mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to faith, and especially when it comes to some morality issues. And it's not just father-son relationships, but I think a lot of it has to do with the parent of the same or similar gender identity, and a lot of it has to do with that. And that was, for me, was a little bit of wishing that our son was a girl, because I kind of felt like, well, he might have that same strained father-son relationship that I and my father had, and I don't want that. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to be that person that he comes and talks to about anything, that he will be able to rely on me for anything. So this is something big in the movie that happens with almost every character, is that those familial relationships and being mm-hmm. strained, and talking about
or lost opportunities.
Yeah, lost opportunities. And I think how this relates to faith is that so much of our faith and our communities based around faith use this metaphor, these familial metaphors, mm-hmm. especially with God being father, or
and the collective as being like the church family.
Yeah, the church family. These are your spiritual family, or however. That's what I grew up with, was people saying, "This is your spiritual family. We are all brothers and sisters in Christ," which I never really liked that, because I kind of felt like it was kind of incest to date somebody within the church then, but that was the only people that I knew were inside the church. So I was a weird teenager.
Strange thoughts of teenage Miguel. I personally loved it because it actually, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm very pro peace and love everybody. And so when there would be people arguing on the playground, I'd be like, guys, you need to just knock it off. Don't you know we're all brothers and sisters? Don't you know that, we are all related? Which is actually true. Actually, everybody on this earth is related to one single woman who actually lived in Africa thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. But that's,
Science! And, this will come into play a little bit later with one of our controversial issues, but I want to talk a little bit about that, especially with the metaphor that we use for God mm-hmm. as Father. Is for a long time, I found it really hard to relate to a lot of images of God, because people kept using that metaphor throughout my life. God the Father is He and Him, and using those pronouns and very masculine terms for God. And I didn't relate to those very well because of my strained relationship with my father. Was that, how can I trust in this being? How can I trust in something that, I don't trust in real life? I don't trust my father completely because of these things that I'm strained in the relationship with. And so it wasn't until it was in college, and I had a lot of very progressive Bible professors who kind of pushed the fact that God is gender neutral, and would often do things like saying that, pray to Mother God, just to kind of break their students a bit, which I also in turn used for a while just to start theological arguments with people.
Ah, jeez, young Miguel.
Is that really opened God up to me, is because I do have a good relationship with my mother. My mom is somebody that I feel like I can go to with anything, with any, situation, and talk to her. And even if she's angry for a little bit, I know that she will forgive me and accept me even after that. And, I always felt that unconditional love with my mother. And so that image of God really opened God up to me. And especially in the Old Testament, in the Torah, when God is, in the Jewish Bible, when they're talking about nature, and they're talking about God with nature, and God as nurturing and all these other things, it's always the word of Spirit God, as the Holy Spirit that we come to know in the Trinity. There is that it's a very feminine kind of thing. That's why I kind of related to those images a lot more, was because of that picture. And you see this kind of happening with Peter in this movie, with his relationship with ego, and with that, no, he loved his mother. And even that one point when the big twist of the movie comes out, that
I think we can say it.
That ego put the tumor in his mother, in Peter's mother.
And just so then ego didn't have to love her anymore because she was dead. That just what? Who does that?
Yeah, it's a jackass move.
God, yeah, very much a jackass move.
So yeah, and you saw. I mean, for Peter, I'm sure that if he were ever to come to a religion, that's he would not relate well to a father metaphor unless he viewed it in the terms of Yondu. And even though Yondu was kind of rough with him, he was still more of a father figure to Peter than ego. But there's still that messed up image there, and I think that so many of us that come from broken homes and broken familial relationships, that it's hard for us to relate to the church or even to God because of those things.
Well, and one thing that I think is interesting too, we do see. We met, especially in the Christian church, a lot of God the Father, and having him take on this masculine role. He's usually the figure that is angry, that invokes wrath upon us, that is trying to keep us in line. But then you also have the image that's really common in the Western world anyway, of Mother Earth. And she's more nurturing. She's more giving. She is more forgiving as well. Too bad we're treating her like crap right now, but so it's just so.
But might that have to do with some of our familial relationships? I know that a lot of people have strained relationships with their mother, and it might be that because they don't view their mother as somebody who should be respected, that they don't want to respect their Mother Earth. Anyway, that's just a thought.
Yeah, maybe they have some underlying mommy issues, and so they're okay with burning rainforest to the ground, and the fact that the flood, you were telling me this morning, with the seeds.
Oh yeah, and I just saw this on a Facebook post. I didn't research it. I didn't fact check it yet. So that the seed vault.
But we are after this podcast, and we'll let you know if it's
Yeah.
totally wrong.
The Doomsday Seed Vault, that's far up north somewhere, that it got flooded because the permafrost melted due to climate change. And which I thought somebody should have been prepared for that, you know?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking that up right now. Let's
All right.
see.
I think that this also has to do with the reason why so many millennials have a difficult time fitting into a church family or a church community rather, is because of their strained familial relationships that, you know, they don't really see eye to eye with their siblings, or they see their sibling as, you know, kind of the worst person on the planet, as per... Oh, okay. Is it false? It's false
okay,
news?
sorry. Going back a little bit. So I just did a handy dandy Google, and it does say it did flood. However, the seeds are probably still safe. So,
Okay, good.
yeah. So we're still fine. Our seed supply has not gone with the wind.
Well, yeah, that's that's funny because, you know, the wind
seeds.
spreads seeds.
Yep,
Anyway.
I know. I'm pretty clever.
So, getting back to that point of, you know, millennials fitting into the church because of those strained familial relationships, is seeing everybody as a brother and sister. You know, you don't. I mean, a lot of us have strained relationships with our siblings too.
Some of us don't have siblings.
Yeah, some of us don't have siblings, and we both come from families with siblings. I have an older sister and a younger brother, and Kathy has two older sisters and a younger sister. And, you know, some of those relationships are great. Some of them, you know, are not so great. And I love and I respect my siblings, and I wish I could talk to them more. But we all have, you know, our own issues. And, you know, I talked about this, a few weeks ago, and I can't remember what. Oh, it was in a This Is Us episode when I talked about how I wish my family was like that, how I could just call them with anything. But there's still that part of me that feels like I can't, because they have their own things that they're dealing with.
I feel like you're intruding.
Yeah, exactly. Even though our last episode, I did say that you should call somebody anyway, even if you feel like they're
Miguel, maybe you
intruding.
should take your own advice.
I know I should.
Well, and like me, like I kind of joke around, like me being the black sheep of the siblings, or like the black sheep of the family, because I feel like, I know it's not the case, but I feel like I tend to be forgotten about quite a bit, especially since I do live, you know, away from most of the family. Now, I do have another sister who also lives away from the family, and I'm sure she feels the same way that I do, just because we're not around the rest. However, my oldest sister, she also lives near her in-laws, so at least she has, you know, that type of family around, whereas us, like, we're up here by ourselves next to a lake.
We're ready for the zombie apocalypse. We can easily get to the best place on Earth to survive a zombie
Don't tell
apocalypse.
anybody, because then they're gonna know.
Well, that's if they do their research and find out where we actually are. So, and where that actually is.
Sorry, we're getting really off track. Where were we going again?
Yeah, with the
Let's
familiar
reel it back in.
relationships. So that's why so many people look for this new kind of community, is to farm the communities in their own sort of way, is to find something that they enjoy doing and kind of base something around it.
Yeah, finding their tribe.
Finding their tribe. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit with Legion, with the way that that new group of X-Men there are kind of, you know, his new community, his new family. And I think that's very true for the Guardians, for all of them.
Yeah.
You know, as you know, that Drax, you know, his family met, you know, a horrible end and was at the hands of Ronan. And
he still, like, is clearly distraught about it.
Yeah. And, you know, for Gamora with everything that Thanos did. And,
Well, her, like, witnessing, like, her blood relatives dying.
Yep.
And then her being essentially trained to be a assassin, and yet still try it was almost as if she was forced to see him as a father.
Yeah.
You know, she calls him father, like even her adopted sister calls him father, even though they were both clearly kidnapped, is what the situation was. Like, they were kidnapped.
Yeah, Nebula obviously shows a lot more strain from those bad relationships.
It's like Gamora learned to rely on herself, and her Nebula was more like she needs she needs that reassurance. Like, she needs to know that she is doing well and that somebody sees her favorably. And I think that's kind of has thrown off her family views. And then Rocket has no family. He
is genetically engineered.
Yeah, he was made.
Yeah.
So he's never really had a family, so he doesn't even know the first thing about what family is really until he, comes into with the Guardians. And then Groot, we're not entirely sure. Maybe he did have a family. Maybe I want to say in the comics he might have had a tree family, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure.
He started out as a villain in comic books. Then through a weird course of events, which I do not know about, he became part of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
And then one thing led to another, and now he's Baby Groot.
Now he's Baby Groot.
Yes.
Jesus imagery in first Guardians of the Galaxy, and now Baby Groot.
So they all come from either not having a family, literally not having a family, to coming from broken families. Just their whole background, no one has good family relationships. I think that they coming together, especially at the end of this movie, finally realized okay, it's fine that we argue. Families do argue. Even the best of families argue and fight, but they're always going to be there to help each other out, to get them to get each other out of trouble. And I think that essentially is what family is supposed to do.
Yeah, and I mean, even as Yondu was telling Rocket, was that that whole scene there where he was laying himself bare and kind of calling Rocket to the carpet, where he's kind of you're scared, you really are scared that they're not going to accept you anymore, and so you keep pushing them away, yet they keep coming back. And he's I'm the same way, and he did that with Peter, and he realizes that about it is that he really was Peter's daddy. And that he said in the end there was that he may be your father, but he wasn't your daddy. And that's so oftentimes we have those surrogate people in our lives that really become those people in our own lives is really becoming our surrogate father or our surrogate mother. And in college, for me, I did have a surrogate mother, only because she was there and my mom was 6 hours away. And I had surrogate fathers throughout my high school career, and I needed that. And I found that so often within church communities, but without it being actually said. And I think that ultimately this boils down to what was told to me by one of those surrogate fathers in a sermon that he did, was and it was a long time ago. I think it was a Father's Day sermon, but he was saying that here in the church, even for those who are without fathers, that we are to be the fathers to the fatherless, because that's what God said that God was in the scriptures, was that God is father to the fatherless. And I think that was beautiful, because he took that upon himself, was that saying that this in essence was what God calls us to do. If this is what God is, then we should be it too. Is we should be that family to each other. And so oftentimes in these church communities, we end up judging each other. We end up, pushing each other away. And, we don't actually want them to be family because, of whatever it is that pushes us away from each other. But
I think it depends on the community and
Yeah, and I think that's what's so important about these communities, about these new types of communities that people are forming, is that it doesn't have to be around, you know, a religion. It can be around people who enjoy the same video game, or people who enjoy the television show The Office,
Or like theater groups.
Yeah.
I mean, back in Jamestown, like I really felt like during that time, like they were our like adoptive family. Like I would even consider them still to be my siblings. Like I would joke around and like even like call them my sisters.
Well, considering that you often got mistaken for one of them, so
Yes. Oh gosh, yeah. Even by like people who saw her every day, they would see me and like say, "Oh, hey, like how are you today?" And I'd be like, "I have no idea who you are."
and I think that those things are important because I think that's ultimately the place that we can go to and actually bring about our more controversial ideas and actually, you know, kind of workshop those things to see, you know, if they're worth sharing with the larger world. And that's ultimately what they talked about in that podcast, in the Humanize Me podcast. So go and listen to that one. Again, another plug, and tell them that we sent you. You know, so mention the Honest Faith Conversations podcast. And you're a part of our community because you listen to us ramble on every week for about 45 minutes, which is fantastic. And we love you guys for it because we love doing this. And
Yeah, and well, we'll let you know like how you can you know, join the conversation as you guys hear every single week. So please do. But should we move on to the favorite segment?
Yes.
Controversial issues.
we should. And we actually have time to deal with all of these this week. Yay! So the first one is, I thought of this afterwards, like I do with most of my weird ideas. They come right before going to bed or in the middle of the night when my son wakes me up. Is I thought, you know, this movie could really be an allegory for the way that evangelical Christianity is kind of breaking down. Is that if you see ego as this as that image of the evangelical God, and
Trying to spread his roots and
yeah,
reach.
trying to, you know, get that into everything and everybody, is that it would be it, and they would all be uniform and the same that at that point, and you know, it kind of, it shows that allegory and that how that this new kind of family kind of breaks that down and breaks, and that we're family because we're unique, we're all different, and that we help each other in different ways, kind of thing. And so this I thought it could be that. I'm pretty sure that James Gunn was not intending it to be that allegory, but you know, I was like, you know what, it could be. So
See, and then I didn't think it was ego, which is the allegory. I thought it was the sovereign, you know, the gold people that, you know, all looked the same. Everybody's genetically, you know, modified to be the best that they can be. They all like think the same. They're very proud. They take offense very easily to anybody who even like suggests, you know, something bad about them. So I feel like they are an allegory for the evangelical church, because not all, but many of them like have like a certain set of rules that you're supposed to follow. And a lot of them, if you go outside of those rules or if you break too many of those rules, they will kick you out. Like, you are no longer a part of that community. You are not welcome. You cannot be a part of them anymore. And that ultimately is what I feel is a reason why a lot of millennials are no longer attracted to the church, is because of practices like that.
Yeah. And that's where I kind of see it in ego more, is because, you know, I see that this is kind of a shunning of the Christological image that evangelicals have, you know, especially with the father-son dynamic between ego and Peter, and that ego, in a sense, kind of kills Peter, and Peter comes back sort of in a way as, you know, kind of doing this his own thing. And that's kind of the view, the Christological view of the redemption story of, Jesus dying on the cross and all this other stuff, is that God killed God's son so that God could redeem, all of humanity, make humanity just like God. And that's, in my own opinion, I don't think that that's exactly the gospel. I think the gospel is exactly what Jesus said, was that the gospel is that the kingdom is here, the kingdom is now, is that you're, live like you're in the kingdom, is, treat each other with kindness and love. And that's exactly what, Jesus taught. And so anyway, that's my own kind of thing, my own controversial issue.
Yeah.
But I agree with you too on seeing the sovereign as the same thing. And that's, I think it reinforces that idea that things that are uniform are kind of bad. So
yeah, well, I guess it's, I think part of it is because in the past I have been criticized by certain people for having such an expansion of my different types of friends. Like I have friends who are Wiccan. I have friends who are Jewish, who are Muslim, who are agnostic, who are atheist, like all over the place. And I welcome their diversity. Like I love getting their opinions on different topics and issues. And I feel like it has expanded me as a person to know those different viewpoints. And I feel like I just feel like you're going down a very, very bad path when you try to shut out different viewpoints.
Yeah. And that brings us to our next controversial issue, which is that whole thing with the blood is thicker than water thing, is that which relationships are more important? Is it your family or is it your friends? And ultimately, I think that both are important. They're just important in different ways. I think it comes with maturity, is understanding how your familial relationships shade your viewpoint of the world, and how, those things kind of really shade with much certainty how you're going to mentally take in a lot of the input from the world. And so I think that your friends are important for them to keep you grounded, to keep you kind of more in that area of knowing that things are still going to be okay, that you're going to survive, that you've got support, and that, that maybe some of those viewpoints aren't correct. And so, I think that blood is thicker than water in the sense of viscosity and scientific reasoning, but I also think that both bonds are equally as important.
Well, and I feel like it depends on the situation and your circumstance. I think that if, like, one group is more toxic, if one group is more hateful, like whether it be of either you or of just groups of people in general, whichever is the more like hateful side of the world, you probably should not be with them. You should probably gear yourselves to the other side. So if your family is like that, very, very toxic, like makes you feel like a bad person, maybe you shouldn't be hanging around your family as much. Maybe you should go towards your friends, and like vice versa. Like if all of a sudden you find yourself in a group of friends who preach hate and preach that one group is better than the other, and that we should like isolate ourselves and keep all the other people who are different from us outside of the group, maybe you should go, back to your family and, see what their view is. And if it's a little better, it makes you feel like a better person, then, maybe you should stick with that. And of course, in both cases, like if your family makes you a bad person and your friends make you a bad person, maybe you just need to find a different group of friends.
Yeah.
Like easy solution there. Well, not easy, as you know, because making friends as an adult is a very hard task.
Yes. Which I'll plug the website Meetup. If you've never been to meetups.com, go. You can find communities centered around almost anything. And I used to run a group on there. It got too expensive for me, so I don't do that anymore. But we're on Facebook now, Interfaith Pub Theology, so you can actually find us there.
Yeah. Also, if you want to learn more about trying to make friends as an adult, Stuff Mom I Never Told You is now back on the air, and I'm like, yay!
So you want to plug them too?
Yes, because I love them so much. Okay, so they have new hosts, and they're great. I know a lot of people were nervous when they first came out. If you haven't heard them before, I really, really highly suggest going into it now, especially since they have new hosts, so you can see them, with fresh eyes. But anyway, I think it was 2 podcasts ago, they did a podcast on making friends as an adult and how hard it is. So go check them out.
Yep.
And tell them we sent you, and that I love them very much.
The last controversial issue is acceptance, especially in the point that we are in our world today. Is a lot of people see acceptance as their problem because they don't accept me as a human being, or that other people, because PC culture, and they're just doing this because they want to keep people from saying what they want to say. No, I think it's all a matter of acceptance, that people will accept you for who and what you are, no matter who and what you are. And I think that's where the church falls down a lot, is that they don't want to go with PC culture, but in a sense they're offending people. They're saying that we don't accept you for who and what you are because you're questioning your gender identity, or you're questioning your sexual identity, or all this other stuff,
or you're a woman and you wear pants.
Exactly.
And along the lines of the acceptance too, with Yondu, like he goes in and out, like you see him, like he was part of the Ravagers, right? Is that what they're
Ravagers?
Called? Ravagers at the part of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Like he's with them, like he still is with the group. Then all of a sudden they find out that he was dealing essentially in human trafficking, kind of, sort of. I mean, because he was finding Ego's children, bringing them to Ego, thinking that Ego was just gonna have them join the family. He then finds out he's actually killing the kids, which is why he takes Peter. But anyway, so that whole story comes out. So his group finds out that he's dealing with, trading people essentially for goods, which is a big no-no. Like they have some kind of moral code, and that's they're kind of like pirates. They have some kind of small moral code, and that's one of the things that is off limits. So then him and his group gets kicked off. I know I'm trying to be fast. Him and his group gets kicked off. So he is out on his own. People hate him. But then they hear the story about what he did for Peter and how he redeemed himself. And then at the end, during his funeral, he gets what's really, really important to him is having the funeral.
The Ravager funeral.
The Ravager funeral. Yeah. And that was a beautiful moment. Like finally at the end, he was able to come back to the group, and they were able to accept him. So I really appreciated that if you didn't get the feels at that point in time, you're not human.
So anyway, and it's okay if you're not human. We'll still accept you.
We'll still accept you.
With that being said, we got to go through our closing really quickly here. So remember to find us on thehonestfaith.com, or send us a voicemail at our number that we gave you in a few episodes ago.
You have to listen to them to find out.
Yeah, find us on social media. Also, we're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Those are the two that we update more often than not. And we do have our own subreddit, so you can join a community there, which, I think there's only me that's a subscriber right now. And so with all that being said, I invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.